You know every time we speak, it's no apologies. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory, presenting industry insiders, brought by Bill Murray. He help you in a real hurry. From ownership to healthcare, he an advocate, teaching you how to buy and sell practices. From CPAs to attorneys, all guests, here to help you with your goals. You never know who's on next. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory. Let's go!
Let's go! Industry insiders, everyone, welcome. It is great to see everyone. I hope you're having a great week. I'm ending my week today with a really good friend. We're going to talk a lot about just a veterinary market update. Summer is officially over, which is hard to believe that this year is flying back so quick. But this guest that we have on was actually our first guest when we launched Industry Insiders. A great banker, a great leader, and works for the largest lender to veterinarians in the United States. And I thought this would be a really great opportunity to kind of check in with one of the bigger players in the market, someone that has a really great 30,000 foot level view of what's really going on nationally, and give an overview of, hey, what are we seeing out there? And maybe validate some of the things that we think are going on, and maybe question some of the things that we assume are going on and may not be. So with that, Chris Howard, come on in. Welcome to Industry Insiders. So great to have you and so great to see that smiling face. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Bill. I'm doing well. Thanks so much for the invitation again. It's hard to believe it's been over a year plus since we did this original podcast, and
Still
congrats
here.
to you all on your success, man. It's amazing
Thank
to
you,
see all the transitions you've been a part of over the past year plus.
It's been a crazy couple years, but happy to have you back on. And I love talking with, as a reformed former banker, I love talking with bankers because you guys really do see the ins and outs of the industry. You work with a lot of major companies. A lot of the big companies in veterinary medicine rely on financing to sell their products. Whether you're a practice broker like myself, or you're trying to sell equipment, or you're trying to sell diagnostics, lending is a big part of the industry that I think a lot of people don't realize. So you guys have a really great view into the market and how things are going. So I wanted to bring you on today to talk a lot about that. I've got some assumptions that I've made with my business. I certainly don't see everything. I think there's a lot of noise out there about, interest rates and corporate and all these things. So I just wanted to ask a few questions today, get your take, and I'm really happy that you were willing to come back on and join. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think in terms of the marketplace,
If you want to just give an overview of, 30,000 foot level, what is it that you're seeing? Is the market going well? Is this still a space that Bank of America expects to invest in and lend to? And how's the year going?
yeah, no, great question. I think last year with the presidential election taking place, there was almost a roadblock in the way of a lot of business owners or soon to be business owners that thought about practice ownership and what they can do to enhance it. I feel like once that the election was decided and people kind of, had a pretty good view of what it looks like maybe moving forward, the floodgates opened up. So this year has been everything and anything regarding transitions, startups. We're seeing a ton of buy-ins throughout the United States. But yeah, private ownership seems to be back in a pretty big way. And, I think there's a lot of noise around the industry and visits being down. And, we try to take a deeper look into that and exactly what's going on there. And I'm curious to get your opinion on this, but it feels like the pet life cycle, if you will, right? During COVID, everyone adopted pets, or they adopted multiple pets. And if you look at the life cycle of a dog or a cat, I feel like we're in that, we're out of that puppy or kitten phase where they need the biggest quality of care and the most visits at a practice. And it's kind of morphed into that adolescent stage or adulthood of your pet. And those visits are just naturally going to be a little less frequent at the practices. So it feels like we might be in the calm before the storm. So I'm curious to see what you're seeing when you're looking at valuations, when you're looking at these practice financials. Have you seen a little bit of a slowdown potentially in that calm before the storm to where we ramp back up in the geriatric phase of a pet's life cycle? That's the way it feels to us, and we're ramping up and getting ready for the push.
That's a really great point. And I've thought about it a little differently. The practices and the hospitals that we have worked with and seen financials and data on. What we have found is a good delta is the practices with a really good patient communication system and really good systems around educating patients on when the next appointment is and the follow-ups and the text messages and practices that put a lot of emphasis on, hey, you've come in, your next appointment is in the next 6 months. Your next appointment is for this. Don't forget in the fall, you should be thinking about these things, flea and tick season, et cetera. So I feel like the practices that we talk to that haven't experienced that huge downsize of visits are usually the ones that have really good protocols and educate their clients on when their next appointment is, what they should be thinking about, and why they're coming in 6 months to get something done. So that's one. The second is, I think visits are down also a little bit. Like the puppy phase thing is very interesting, and I think there's definitely some weight to that. Also, I think the return to work thing. People just
Yeah.
don't have the opportunity to get their pet into the clinic, and clinics are still extremely busy, right? If you have a good clinic in a good suburban or urban area, it might be months before you have an opening in your schedule. And now with people back to work and having to go to an office, et cetera, I think the ability to just take your pet in when an open appointment came up, I think that's diminished. So I never thought about the puppy thing, but I think if you take all of those into consideration, if you have a hospital where visits are down a lot, it's probably a
Mhm.
bit of a combination of all three of those things. But I think it really does start with that communication system and educating clients on why they're expected to come in 6 months and what they should be thinking about throughout the year with their pet. What I don't buy into is everyone gave their pets back. You hear those stories and it's like, well, everyone that
Yeah.
got a pandemic pet just gave their pet back. And I'm sure I know that has happened, right? You hear the things about, oh, the ASPCAs are overrun, et cetera. I just don't see that in a lot of the areas that we cover and a lot of the suburban areas that we're in. I don't see that as the main driver of why visits are down, right? I think it's just accessibility and people's ability to get into the practice has diminished.
Yeah. No, that's fair points. I think people need to, the practice owners and soon to be practice owners are really focused on trying to build efficiencies through
Mhm.
technology. And now you're seeing it pretty much, I feel like it came out overnight, but it hasn't. It's been years in the making, like the AI push. There's conferences built around it. You're seeing more of those AI companies trying to figure out ways to make the practice owner more efficient, more profitable. Right. And I think that that's something that is almost a bridge we have to go across, given the fact of, cost of goods sold have gone up. So your drugs, your supplies, they're just going to naturally increase. Next door to walk through, I think, is just the lay and the professional staff getting more expensive too. So I think the everyday business owner is really reliant on consultants, people that are in the industry that are veterinary specific, that can give back. Not just, hey, it's a culture issue. You got to fix your culture. I think a lot of it is that, but it's being more strategic with your technology and your platforms. And we've seen, a lot of the partners that we work with really focus in on that, that technology side to try to increase the efficiencies for their practice owners and offer more value back to them. So yeah, it is good to see, but the activity is super high. I think we had a record month last month in terms of how many loans we originated and just the overall volume. So that was kind of fun to be a part of, kind of crazy to be a part of too. But yeah, and I think you had a practice close last month as well, if not a couple practices closed last month. So again, congrats
Yeah.
on that success.
I feel like, we don't spend all of our time with corporate deals, right? So we do a lot of private sales stuff. And it's funny when people ask me about the business, I talk to them, they're like, oh, so are you doing private deals? I'm like, absolutely, we're doing private deals. Like, I
Yeah.
love doing private deals. I love making sure that private ownership has a path and that associates specifically have a path to become an owner at some point. And we've had really good success this year with helping associates into ownership opportunities, which has been great. So my viewpoint is that associates want to be owners. They're just not maybe talking about it as loud as they have 10, 15, 20 years ago because they're worried about getting fired, or they're just a little more timid about telling people that they want to be an owner or they're having ownership aspirations. But if we've sold 15 practices this year, 15 or 16 at this point, I mean, 11 of them went to associate veterinarians that were stepping into ownership opportunities for the first time, which is fantastic. So my viewpoint is the associate market, the ownership market is thriving. Are you seeing a similar thing? Because I mean, my viewpoint of that is kind of Northeast. Are you seeing the same thing nationally? Would you say that there are more associates today thinking about ownership opportunities? Is it the same? Like, where am I right or wrong there?
No, you're 100% spot on. It definitely feels as if, 2, 3 years ago, and you just follow the timeline of events, right? There's a ton of private equity consolidation that took place. That cause and effect swung that pendulum where associates probably couldn't afford to make the outlay that the corporations were able to. That pendulum swung all the way over this way to where someone said, "Hey, I'm going to be a practice owner. I just need to go the route of a startup." And we saw the startups really prevalent, over the past 2 to 3 years. But it feels like that pendulum has started to shift back over. And I do think there's a reason for that, obviously. You're seeing the people coming back to us and saying, "Hey, I can't find a space that makes sense. They're trying to charge me too much on a lease, or the real estate's too expensive to buy." And that's causing a need, right, to see that pendulum shift back over to the transition wing of our business. And so again, I see private owners' practices getting larger, and there's a ton of need for expansion to service the clients that are coming over from different practices that, quite honestly, aren't doing as well. And these private owners are gobbling up that goodwill. So it's creating that cause and effect of, hey, I need to expand, but I also want to reward my associates that are making this a possibility. And they're doing that through buy-ins, right? And through equity that they'll give to those associates. So we're seeing just a ton of that buy-in activity at large practices taking place, which is always fun to see. So more people get to, enjoy practice ownership all under one umbrella. But yeah, like I said, last month was a record-breaking month for us on the vet team. The number of loan originations, the pure loan amount, so everything's kind of pumping on this side of the table, and we're trying to find, ways to manage that flow of business. So that's been our
Sure.
biggest challenge.
Well, it's great to hear. I mean, anytime a lender tells me that they're having a record month or a record year or numbers are up, that just means that the industry itself and the activity going on is in a positive direction and is moving really well. Interesting to hear about the startup pendulum swing, because it was funny when we first talked a year ago or so,
Yeah.
that pendulum was very much startup and it's starting to swing back. I'm seeing the same thing. One thing is a certainty, I think, is that as corporate and private equity sponsored buyers and acquirers of hospitals kind of moved upstream to 2, 3, 4 doctor or more practices,
Hmm.
that didn't mean that single doctor practices couldn't sell. It just means they probably can't sell to a corporate consolidator. So you still have this huge amount of owners that are in at or nearing or past retirement age. They are either getting towards retirement age, they are at retirement age, or they are well past retirement age. So those practices will come to market, the good ones and the ones that are worth selling, and there are a lot of them. I would say the
Hmm.
minority are the ones that can't sell or won't sell. But if you are a single doctor today, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I don't have a path to sell my business to anyone, and none of the associates want to own, or, there's no owners out there and corporate won't buy me. I have that conversation all the time. The answer is you're wrong. You
Right.
can absolutely sell your practice. I mean, we sold a practice earlier this year that I remember telling the owner, even I was like, this was going to be a very tough sale. It was kind of in an area of the country where you really wanted to live. It wasn't suburbs. It wasn't urban. It was a lifestyle practice in the mountains, near the lakes. You had to find a buyer that really loved the outdoors and wanted to be in this specific area of the country. And we found that. I mean, almost by luck, honestly. But
Yeah.
it just goes to show, like, the thought of I can't sell my practice or I can't sell my hospital. If you're nearing retirement age, it might take a little while, but you
Hmm.
should be, if it's a good practice and it's a good ownership opportunity, you should be able to find a buyer for that. And associates that I talk to regularly, They are thinking about ownership. They're just not outwardly out there like waving the ownership flag saying, I want to be an owner. Let's figure it out. Right.
100%. We go back a long ways, and I remember back in the day, it feels a little bit like Back to the Future. Back in the day, 10 years ago, everyone wanted that 1 to 1.5 doctor practice with real estate or without that was doing
Sure.
around 1 million to 1.3 million. And that's what we have nowadays. And those are the folks that are having the challenges trying to sell those practices. So it is kind of a head scratch. I think it's just educating the new veterinarians coming out of school that, hey, this is a pretty darn good opportunity to get into practice ownership with something you get your arms around and then grow. It's just a matter of, are you okay living in that area? And most of the time, people that do move out of the cities and go to some of the rural areas where you're starting to see these practices having a little bit more difficulty selling, they become extremely happy and extremely profitable. And I think that's something that we can't sleep on, and we got to kind of re-educate the newer veterinarians that this was and still is a great opportunity for you to get yourself into practice ownership and really thrive. So,
Totally.
100% agree
And
with
I,
you.
and I don't, I certainly don't bash the corporate model either because listen, I think a healthy market for any industry has a good amount of both private sale business and corporate owned business, right? Some of the corporate owned
Absolutely.
stuff some of the things that they're bringing to the table that now can be implemented in a smaller practice are fantastic. Some of the technology that's come out that's being driven by some of these larger conglomerates, these larger corporations, it's a good thing. The AI revolution that we're in right now, which is just getting started and just starting to hit the industry, those most of the corporate acquirers out there, these larger corporations, these larger companies, they're going to be able to do things with that a small practice owner or a small hospital owner wouldn't even think to do because they don't have the time. So if you
Yeah.
start seeing it in these other practices, it might be like, hey, this is becoming commonplace. They've been able to test it. They've been able to figure out how it works. And that's how a technology then goes out to the masses. Someone takes that first leap, someone with the wherewithal and the ability to do that, the time, the effort, and the capital to invest in AI or invest in a new technology, they go and try it, they refine it, they make sure the application makes sense, and then it's ready to kind of go to the masses. So I get very excited about the tech that's coming to healthcare in general and in the veterinary space, certainly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's fun because, again, we mentioned it earlier on this call. Cost of goods sold are probably not going to come down right away, if ever
Yeah.
again, to where they were, 5, 10 years ago. So, costs go up. Obviously, fee schedules need to reflect that and go up. And then educating your clients exactly what that means and why things are increasing in terms of price. But yeah, trying to gain those efficiencies through the technology that we have nowadays, I think is imperative, and it strengthens that practice return, so when someone like ourselves or you look at that business and say, hey, is this a solid, trending north business in terms of the revenue and the income? You can say, yes, we've done, incredible things to enhance our efficiencies at the practice through, again, maybe the AI platform, maybe it's joining up through different buying groups. We're seeing a ton of people rolling out different buying groups and becoming a part of that to try to control those cost of goods sold, to then give back to their clientele. But I think it's also, maybe getting back to, different revenue, um, production by procedures, if you will. So, some people believe you make your money in the reception area. Some people believe you make your money in the surgery center. Nowadays, I don't think anyone really thinks you're making money on over-the-counter sales, but there's all these different avenues within a practice to become profitable and to maximize your efficiency. So I'm a student of the industry. I love hearing what people are doing and studying up in different markets, different segments, and hearing from our team, hey, this is a very novel idea, and sharing it across the country. And then we can bring that back to our clients in different marketplaces. So yeah, but the ones that you're seeing, Bill, are you seeing an uptick of people trying to get valuations done right now in prep of year-end push of transitions, or what's that look like on your end?
The two biggest complaints that I get from owners that are starting to think about the end of their ownership journey and potentially selling or preparing to sell is they're having a difficult time with staff, and the costs of labor and the costs of goods have just gone through the roof. So they're not making what they were making before. And what's funny is that when you go back on them and say, well, when was the last time you raised fees? Usually they don't have a good answer, or they don't have a good
Right.
grasp on, well, we did our normal fee raise in January. Okay, well, what was that? Well, it was the normal 3.5%. Well, but your goods went up 7. So how are you, of
Yeah.
course you're not feeling like you're making as much. And it's unfortunate. This is where I love veterinarians because they, as a whole, like bleeding heart people. They really care. Like they became veterinarians because it was more of a calling. They didn't go to veterinary school to make a lot of money. They went to veterinary schools because they had a passion about animals and clients and pets and everything. So they're like, to get a veterinarian owner typically to raise fees is it's not easy. So
Yeah.
what one of the things you were talking about profit centers, one of the pieces of advice I give everyone is, your fees need to be raised if the goods are being raised. And that's just where we are today, regardless of, it doesn't matter who's in office and make it political. If your cost of goods are going up, that some or all of that needs to be passed back to the consumer. And the second piece is, it feels like, that surgery, there are less and less veterinarians, early career veterinarians, that are willing to take a knife and cut something open. So surgery is becoming more of a specialized area of veterinary medicine. You see it in some of the emergency centers and the 24/7 emergency centers and the specialty hospitals that are out there. They promote their surgery as a specialty. We have surgical board
Right.
certified specialists in surgery. So if you're a veterinarian that's doing surgery and you haven't significantly raised some or all of your surgical fees, you're missing the boat there. And again, you may not want to do it, but everyone else is, and it is a profit center that is becoming more specialized. So if you are open to doing surgery, you are becoming less and less of the norm, and you should be compensated for being willing to do that. So I always say surgery fees is the first place to look. The
Yeah.
shift
No, it definitely
gears.
feels. Oh,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish that.
No, I was going to say it definitely feels like, we follow animal health follows human health, usually about 5 to 7 years after the fact. And you're 100% right. The new grads that you see, they're not as engaged on the surgery side of the practice. They a lot of times will bring in the traveling surgeon to do soft tissue surgery now, not just hard tissue surgery, which is it's kind of a head scratch to us because we feel like that's where you're going to probably make a pretty good amount of income if you embrace that. But you're right. There's all these different specialized practices popping up. Your imaging centers, right? Your rehab facilities, your boarded specialists, surgery centers, and emergency centers. And that boom that's taking place on that side of the business is something that we're very intrigued by, and we're trying to, you know, tap into that marketplace as well. But the bread and butter's always been the general practice, companion animal, everyday veterinarians open, 6 days a week, nowadays 5 days a week, to try
Yeah.
to retain that labor and try to make everyone enjoy what they do and not get burned out. So yeah, it's an ever changing, more than ever before environment in animal health, but it's fun to be a part of. It's fun to study up, and it's fun to have these conversations to really understand kind of what you're seeing, and then try to, hopefully share information to get better. So
That's great.
absolutely.
To shift gears for a second, we've talked a lot about associates wanting to own, and I'm very passionate about that, and that's great. Talk to me.
Mhm.
Are you seeing good activity amongst existing owners that are investing in their businesses, either through renovations or expanding or buying real estate or opening up a second or third location? Like, where is that? Are they pulling back a bit, or are they going in and still making those investments?
Yeah, I think it's like a cannonball into the deep end for those current practice owners trying to go through expansion. So, I think, again, cause and effect. A lot of practices were consolidated, right or wrong or indifferent. Not all are created equal in terms of that game. And we've seen a lot of practice owners, if they stayed privately held, enjoy that patient base attrition from neighboring practices that might have transitioned out of practice ownership to a corporate group. And again, not everyone's built the same. It's not always
Sure.
going to be the same situation in every market, but we've seen those current owners that stayed the path as practice owners just expand and blow up and have the need to find additional locations or relocate to a bigger facility. So, our partners that we see on the project side of our business, if you will, the contractors, the architects, the realtors that are helping these doctors connect to these bigger spaces or these bigger opportunities to service the need, they've gone just wild, right? Over the past, I'd say, year plus. And you're seeing that specialization from each one of those segments, each one of those business partners really explode. And it's great to see. You go to the conferences, you'll see conferences that are just geared towards design build and trying to scratch that itch of those practice owners that maybe bought a practice and they've never gone through a project. So we're definitely seeing an uptick, to say the least. in people looking to expand, relocate, remodel, just become more efficient through more square footage and more profitable that
That's
way.
That's great. I mean, to know that there are still investments being made by the existing owners, because that does drive a lot of the market. And it's, one of the things that when someone asks me, like, is my business sellable? And it's a veterinarian, could be a dentist. One of the first questions I ask is, tell me about they're expecting me to ask for their tax returns. I say, tell me about your facility. What does your
Yeah,
facility look like? Have you made an investment in the last 10 years, 5 years, 3 years to make sure that when you walk in and it doesn't look like 1975 just threw up everywhere, right?
right,
So
right,
the best investment an existing owner can make is to make sure their facility is it doesn't have to look pristine. It doesn't have to have all the latest new finishes, but it should look somewhat updated and like of today's world. I don't want to walk in and
right.
see carpet. I don't want to walk in and see wood paneling. I don't want to walk in and see cabinets from 1985. Like, make some investments over time to prepare yourself, because whether you're selling to a corporate acquirer or you're selling to an associate or another veterinarian, that's what they want to see, right? They want to walk in
Exactly.
and feel good about what they're walking into, and that they're not going to have this huge investment after buying your business to get it up to where their standards are today, right?
That's a really good point, Bill. I know I myself, I've been part of those conversations over the years where you're consulting with an associate looking to buy a practice out, and it's exactly what you just described. It's 1972, the wood pine paneling on the walls, the old grade school chairs that are all glued together in the reception area, a flow that makes no sense. It feels like it was remodeled 4 times over, and there's dead ends and just a lot of lost square footage, right, to red space. And when you're consulting that client, you're just telling them, hey, you're not only buying this practice, you're most likely buying a project to follow, and we got to approach it as such. And there's only so much goodwill value that you can tap into in a practice when you buy it, leverage it, and then have to re-tap into that to go ahead and expand it or remodel it or relocate it. So, yeah,
Totally.
there's all this, I think, approach, because you get one chance to do it right, and we want to make sure that hindsight's not 2020 for our clients, and I know you're the same way. So, I think that's really good guidance to give those current practice owners that are on the fence about selling. Do a little reinvestment. The first 3 things that I think anyone notices that's in the industry that when you walk into a practice are going to be the cleanliness, right? The smell, the friendliness of staff, if you're a patient walking through those doors. So I think doing a little self-reflection, and, it doesn't take much to put a coat of paint on a wall. Maybe take a look at the flooring, and maybe look at the technology within the practice and see if that's up to date as well. So good
Totally.
point. Very good point.
We have a French bulldog, and we had to change veterinarians. Well, we didn't have to, but we chose to for a multitude of reasons. But we went from one practice that, as described, a little older, hadn't had a lot of investment in it, and like, good staff, but like, it was just like you were kind of going there and you felt like they were doing you a favor. So my
Yeah.
wife, hey, we're taking Augie someplace else, and the new place we go to, it's privately owned, but it is beautiful. I mean, I walk in and I'm like, this place is, and it was, and again, renovated 5 years ago. It's in like an old
Mhm.
kind of converted house. You have a lot of that in New England, and you walk in and you're just like, this place is awesome. Like this, and like you said, smells great. You don't see stuff laying all over the floor. It's the elementary school chairs. Like, that was fantastic. Like, yeah, you don't see that.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I don't fit in an elementary school chair. That doesn't happen anymore. So,
I'm guilty too,
um,
my friend. Yeah.
that's a really great points. All right. So I'm not going to ask you about interest rates, because for those of you listening, if you want to annoy a banker right away, have the first question be, what's your interest rate, right? It's, as a reform banker, former banker, the number one way to really just get in my gird is to just say, hey, what's your interest rate? So I'm not going to ask you about that. I'm not going to ask you what you think interest rates are going to be either. All right. Because that's probably the second question you get right now. But what do you think the next 4, 5, 6 months looks like? Are you expecting to see growth? Have your inquiries for loans of things coming down the path, are they growing? Like, what do you look like? You hear so much about, jobs reports and employment numbers. What are you seeing, kind of that forward looking indicators that you guys have on what the next 6 to 12 months looks like in your business. Is it look good? Are we feeling good about 2026 as we move into it?
I think so. I think we're kind of getting back to the future, so to speak, on what the cycle used to look like, where you were heavy transition towards the end of the year. We're starting to get a lot of people making those phone calls about, hey, I'm thinking my owner's going to sell it to me. We're targeting end of year close. And going back to your first point, thank you very much for not asking that question. But it's the only question that most people that are not in the
Right.
industry know how to ask. What's your interest
Right.
rate, right? And it's an important question. It's not the only question we believe. We want to be that one-stop shop for anyone's personal and professional business, financial needs. So from our approach, it looks like a one-stop shop in terms of interest rate for the loan, right? Term for the loan, what your fees look like. All these things are really what makes up the characteristics of a good flexible loan, or one that you really didn't get the full story on until it's too late. So thanks again for not asking that question. But we feel like rates will probably stay pretty consistent from where they're at right now. They creep up a little, they creep down a little, unless something massively different happens in the economy. And I know they're projecting supposed Fed cuts. That might play a factor in what they do moving forward. But we try to preach to the clients calling in. Obviously, you're reaching out for a need. Um, do not get hung up on the interest rate. Get get sold on the opportunity, right? If you have an opportunity to buy a great practice or start a really nice practice, just know that interest rate is going to be competitive, but it shouldn't be the decision-making factor whether or not you should pursue a transition
Totally.
or become a practice owner through a startup. You should understand that you can look to refinance those rates as we move forward, just like a home loan looks like. So, don't turn your back on an opportunity because you're waiting for the rates to go down to 3% like they were 3 years, 4 years ago. Those days are probably, most likely behind us. You can never say never, but it's something we want to ensure that people are educated enough to understand that it's really a good time to borrow money. And I'd be a hypocrite to tell you that I love debt. I work in it daily, as does my team, but it's a necessary bridge to get across the other side to enhance your ownership, right? And your earning potential. And we do firmly believe it. We want to make sure we marry people into a good, solid opportunity, no matter what that looks like. I have a saying, I think several on the team have adopted it. I would do this this way, if my wife or my spouse and I were looking to buy a practice, start a practice. I want to take that vantage point, doing it for several years. We can kind of, point you to the right direction of what makes sense here, what might be the best for you and your family. And the loan's a part of it, obviously. So that
That's
was a
great.
longer answer than probably what you were looking for. And I
No,
went
that
on a little
was, I mean,
tangent there.
I,
So
I love your passion about the industry and how I think the point to pull out there is don't let the small details, and interest rate isn't a small detail. It's a big part of the loan, but
yeah,
don't let the small details impede you from investing in your business, because the money that you could make as an owner, if you're an associate today and you're making $100,000 to $150,000 a year, and you buy a practice doing $1 million, $1.2 million, and you have that ability to keep that thing going, and you've got the production capability, and you're going to go in there and make some changes in a positive way, you should make anywhere from 275 to $350,000. Like that
that's right.
should, so by becoming an owner, you will definitely, if you do it the right way, you should absolutely double. And in some cases, triple your income that you're making as an associate. So that investment is well worth a 6% interest rate on a loan, or 6.25 or 5.99. Who cares? It's about the opportunity. And if you're an existing owner, interest rates and small details should not stop you from investing in the business. If the investment is going to help you sell your business at some point, if it's going to help you invest in your business and get better client satisfaction and more clients coming in, if it's introduction of new technology and services that could increase revenue, who
hmm
cares about the rate? Get it done, and get it done the right way, right?
That's an important point. One of the examples that we like to walk a client through, and it's just a math problem. If they're looking to stay an associate and they're on the fence about buying a practice or starting one, we try to take the approach of, if you're buying a practice, what you would make today, and usually it's twice as much. But let's just say, for the example, it's equivalent to what you'd make as a practice owner. Say it's $350,000. That's your salary today. You're making that per year as an associate, and there's that practice to buy on the other side of the table, and you're wrestling with the decision. If you do the math on it, you basically assume some things, right? Interest rate, loan term, all those kind of variables that we can kind of solidify for you. Um, and you take that stretch over a 10-year, 12-year, 15-year timeline, and at the end of it, you have this asset and potentially two assets if you have the real estate, right? That you've built equity in over that time frame. Usually it translates to anywhere from $1 million to $2 million, depending on the size of that practice that you're looking to buy. Difference if you engage and become a practice owner, so try to build your asset, your retirement through that practice ownership is what we firmly believe. And when we show someone that math problem, it becomes a little bit more crystal clear. And I think it settles their nerves and eases their mind that this is the right path for me to take as a practice owner.
You will be able to afford it financially. From a maths perspective, you will generate wealth beyond what you could as an associate. And but I would also say lastly, you are now in total control over the rest of your career. Right?
That's right.
As an associate, you don't have that. You don't have that control as an associate. As an owner, you can take that business however you want. You make the decisions. It does come with more stress, totally. But I see the benefits certainly outweighing the stress. And you have total control of the rest of your career as an owner. So, well, that's great. Listen, man, this was great. Always great to hear from you and the team at Bank of America about what's going on in the marketplace. You guys always have a really good pulse as to how practices are doing and what does the next 6 or 12 months look like. So again, Chris, just a great conversation today. I won't ask you what your WIC low is because we know your WIC low from last time unless it was updated. But I will ask you to give, if you had, one piece of advice, if a veterinarian today was thinking about ownership or a veterinarian owner today was thinking about investment, what's that one piece of advice that you would give them to determine whether or not it was the right move?
I think just don't delay, right? Communicate, start the conversations, and build your team of professionals and mentors that you can lean on to. Especially if you're an associate and you're thinking about buying into the practice or buying out the practice you're currently at. Those conversations don't happen unless you initiate them typically, or the seller, soon-to-be seller initiates them. So do not stand on ceremony. Do not assume that that's going to be the plan. Actively take a role by engaging with your employer and asking the question, if you haven't already, and set clear expectations with them. If you're on the fence about, hey, I think I can probably pull the start off, I think it's the time to start talking through that is now. Your community, your marketplace has people that can help make that dream a reality and not turn it into a nightmare. So the more conversations that you have, the better off you're going to be. That's really the parting shot I would deliver to you and anyone else that's listening to this podcast is don't just sit around on it. Just engage in it and actively pursue it. Those are the folks that we love to look back on as practice owners and kind of reminisce about. Do you remember when you were thinking about doing this and it took you a little bit longer potentially than what you thought originally that you were going to take to be a practice owner? But that's the number one answer when we see people at conferences that did take the leap of faith towards practice ownership. I should have done this 5, 10, 15 years ago, depending on what their tenure of ownership is or tenure of associateship is. Just don't delay. That's the key.
Yeah, that's great. Well, great advice. Chris Howard, Bank of America Practice Solutions, National Sales Manager for their Veterinary Lending Division. Thank you for coming on today. Great conversation. And I look forward to seeing you out there, Chris. Talk soon.
My pleasure, Bill. Thanks again, and congratulations on all your success. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Every time we speak, it's no apologies. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory. Presenting industry insiders. Brought by Bill Murray. He help you in a real hurry. From ownership to healthcare, he an advocate. Teaching you how to buy and sell practices. From CPAs to attorneys, all guests. Here to help you with your goals. You never know who's on next. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory. Let's go!